So, a little while ago, in fact last week, we showed off a cartridge for the Super Nintendo that played every single Super Nintendo game. Or at least it tried to, and it failed on a couple fronts, but there is a future for that thing where it might happen. But this cartridge here, well, there's no updates on it. It's a standalone thing and it pretty much does what it's supposed to do now, and it's not really going to be updated in the future. At least, not really majorly. This thing here is supposed to play every single Nintendo 64 game, and they really haven't told me of any limitations that this thing has. So that's pretty exciting. But does it actually work? Well, let's take a look. This is the Nintendo 64 Everdrive, which you need the Nintendo 64 to actually test with, so we're, okay. I'm actually over here. Now this cartridge was sent in to us by the folks at Crix.com. Now I'm obviously saying their name wrong, which I'm really sorry for, but if you check the description below in this video, you'll see the actual website. You can go and take a look. Now their website is responsible for every single Everdrive cartridge ever made. That includes the NES Everdrive, the Game Boy Everdrive, and the Sega Genesis Everdrive. And the cartridge we looked at last week, the Super Nintendo SD2 SNES, well, the interior components of that was an SNES Everdrive. This is basically where all this stuff came from, this one website, and it's a pretty damn cool site to take a look at. But unfortunately, all those other cartridges we looked at that I just talked about, well see, those ones, they're pretty easy to emulate a lot of those consoles. These 2D graphics are not the hardest thing for modern computers to run. But the Nintendo 64 is special. See, that's all 3D, and most computers and most emulators that I've tried can't run every game you throw at it. Oh, I know a lot of you out there are gonna go, my emulator can run it, and that's fine, guys, but there's games out there that are just not well known and uncommon, and little glitches here and there. 3D rendering for the Nintendo 64 is just not as well done as other consoles we've seen in the past couple of years. But that doesn't mean that there's a huge block about this stuff, that we can't get these games to run easily on modern technology. The Everdrive 64 is solid. It's possibly one of the best cartridges I've ever seen of its sort, simply because it has a 99.9% compatibility rate if you get the latest cartridge with the latest firmware. And I gotta tell you guys, when they say 99.9%, I've got no idea what they're talking about. It's pretty much 100%. This cartridge could run every Nintendo 64 game you throw at it, but unfortunately, if you're trying to run European games in North America, well, you better hope you have a TV that can run a PAL signal, because that looks mighty messed up when you try and run it on here. But if you're in North America and you're running Japanese games, well, same signal. So you can run things on your Nintendo 64 North America, like the Neon Genesis Evangelion game that was only released over there, and you can run it on our systems totally fine. It's a very, very interesting game if you're into anime, and maybe if you're not. Heck, even games that have hacks and modifications can run on this cartridge, and that's pretty damn solid. You ever play GoldenEye 64 with, I don't know, flight mode enabled? Well, now you can, because this thing can do it. I don't recommend doing that, but if you wanted to, you could find a ROM out there that has those kind of modifications and just run it. So that's actually kind of cool. See, in the past, if you wanted to run any of those ROMs on a real Nintendo 64, you'd have to flash an N64 cartridge that you owned previously, ruin it, and then get it to work on your Nintendo 64. And well, now you just upload the ROM on the SD card, throw it on this cartridge, and it works. I really enjoy that kind of stuff. This cartridge is worth its weight in gold because it's capable of running so many games, and it's really well worth it for people out there that are trying to get an awesome little experience of the N64 running the original hardware. Now I know a few of you out there really like your emulation technologies, and that's totally fine. But you know what? That emulator's not going to run everything. But this thing will. Kind of a cool bonus feature about this cartridge, which is a little bit extravagant, but hey, you can do it. You can run NES games off this thing. Now, why would you want to buy a cartridge like this for your Nintendo 64 to run NES games? Heck, I don't know. But being able to run NES games with an analog stick is weird and fun. So if that's something you're into, it works. So if you have some lustful idea to run NES games on your Nintendo 64, you're probably looking at one of the only ways to do that. The Everdrive 64's menu is pretty standard. You got a whole bunch of folders that you can go through, selecting any game you put on the cartridge, and you can run it. It's pretty easy to use. You can't save games to the cartridge like, flash states and stuff like that, but if the game originally had the ability to save on the cart, well, you can do that. And if you have to use a game pack save on the back of your controller, you can use those as well, which is one of those fun little features about the N64 that you forget after all these years, but then you remember that, yeah, you might need that for some games. So anything that you could use on an original Nintendo 64 with the games that were created, like rumble packs or any additional controllers, all work with this cartridge. Everything we threw at it, absolutely everything, games, hardware, peripherals, even the RAM, everything worked perfectly fine. This cartridge is completely solid. It's possibly one of the greatest things I've ever seen released for the Nintendo 64.